In just 47 seconds, one of Hollywood's most respected actors completely dismantled a talk show host on live television, exposing years of built-up frustration in a verbal takedown that ended with security getting involved and cameras cutting to black. What started as simple questions about movies turned into an explosive confrontation about respect, representation, and crossing lines that should never be crossed. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that reveal who these celebrities really are behind the cameras. Last night on Real Time, Bill Maher welcomed Samuel L. Jackson to discuss his latest film projects and career spanning over 4 decades. The studio audience was packed, the energy was high, and nobody expected what was about to unfold. Jackson walked out in his signature style, cool and collected, settling into the guest chair across from Maher's desk. The applause died down and Maher opened with what seemed like standard talk show banter. "Sam, great to have you here," Maher said, leaning back in his chair with that smirk he always wears. "You've been in what, like 300 movies at this point?" Jackson smiled, nodding. "Something like that. I like to work, Bill. Keeps me busy. Keeps me sharp." "That's an understatement," Maher continued. "I mean, you're in everything. Marvel movies, Tarantino films. You even did that Capital One commercial. Do you ever say no to anything?" The audience laughed, but there was something in Maher's tone that felt off. Jackson's smile stayed on his face, but his eyes changed just slightly. Anyone who knows Samuel L. Jackson knows that look. "I say no plenty," Jackson replied calmly. "I just say yes to good opportunities. There's a difference between being selective and being lazy." Maher chuckled, not catching the subtle jab. Right. But seriously, the Marvel stuff, I mean, come on. You're a serious actor. Doesn't it feel like you're just showing up, saying a few lines, collecting a paycheck? It's not exactly Shakespeare." The audience went quiet. You could feel the temperature in the room shift. Jackson sat up a little straighter in his chair. "Actually, Bill, those movies mean a lot to millions of people around the world," Jackson said, his voice still controlled but with an edge now. "And they've given opportunities to actors and filmmakers of color that didn't exist before. So yeah, I take them seriously." Maher waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, don't give me that. They're popcorn movies. Fun, sure, but let's not pretend they're changing the world. You were in Pulp Fiction. That's art. The Marvel movies are just corporate products. Corporate products that employ thousands of people and inspire kids who look like me to dream bigger," Jackson shot back. "But I guess that doesn't matter to you. I'm just saying there's a difference between real filmmaking and franchise content," Maher continued, doubling down. "You know it, I know it, everyone here knows it." Jackson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Let me ask you something, Bill. How many movies have you been in? How many sets have you worked on? How many scripts have you read as an actor trying to find something meaningful?" Maher laughed, but it sounded forced. "I'm a comedian and a political commentator, Sam. That's not my lane." "Exactly," Jackson said. "So maybe stay in your lane instead of telling me about mine." The audience reacted with a mix of gasps and scattered applause. This was escalating faster than anyone anticipated. Maher's face flushed slightly, clearly not used to being challenged so directly on his own show. "Wow, okay," Maher said, trying to regain control. "I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just having a conversation here." "No, you're being condescending," Jackson corrected him. "There's a difference. You do this thing where you act like you're just asking questions or just having a conversation, but really you're disrespecting people's work and then acting surprised when they call you on it." Maher shifted in his seat, his smile now completely gone. "Look, Sam, I respect your work. I've said many times that you're one of the best actors of your generation. But I'm allowed to have opinions about the current state of cinema." "Sure you are," Jackson agreed. "And I'm allowed to tell you when those opinions sound ignorant as hell." The audience erupted. Some people were cheering, others were gasping, and Maher looked genuinely shocked. He wasn't used to guests pushing back this hard, especially not on his own show where he controlled the conversation. "Ignorant?" Maher repeated, his voice rising. "I've been talking about film and culture for 30 years. I know what I'm talking about." "You know what you think you know," Jackson said. "But you're sitting here telling me that movies that have broken box office records, that have created cultural moments, that have given representation to communities that were ignored by Hollywood for decades, that all of that doesn't matter because it's not your definition of art. That's not knowledge, Bill. That's arrogance. Maher's jaw tightened. You could see him trying to decide whether to back down or push forward. Being Bill Maher, he pushed forward. So what? I'm not allowed to criticize Marvel movies now. Is that what we're doing? Everything is so sensitive. Everyone's so offended by everything. There it is, Jackson said, shaking his head. The everyone's too sensitive card. You know what, Bill? Some of us have been hearing the same dismissive bullshit our entire careers. We've been told our stories don't matter. Our experiences aren't universal. Our work isn't serious enough. And when we finally get a seat at the table, when we finally get to be in movies that make billions of dollars and actually matter to people, we still got folks like you telling us it's not good enough. That's not what I'm saying, Maher protested. Then what are you saying? Jackson challenged. Say it clearly. What exactly is your point? Maher paused. And in that pause, he made his biggest mistake of the night. Instead of backing down, instead of acknowledging that maybe he'd touched a nerve for a reason, he decided to get defensive. My point is that there's a hierarchy in art, Maher said slowly. And comic book movies, no matter how much money they make, will never be on the same level as real cinema. That's just a fact. Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. A fact according to who? You? A bunch of old white critics who still think the only good movies are the ones that make them feel smart? Let me tell you something, Bill. Art is about connection. It's about making people feel something. And those Marvel movies you're so quick to dismiss have made more people feel more things than half the pretentious crap that wins awards at film festivals. Oh, please, Maher scoffed. Next you'll be telling me that Fast and Furious movies are high art. If they mean something to someone, then, yeah, they matter. Jackson fired back. That's how art works. You don't get to be the gatekeeper of what's important. Nobody made you the king of culture, Bill. The tension was unbearable now. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay silent. Maher's producers were probably screaming in his earpiece, but he wasn't listening. I've built a career on saying what other people are afraid to say, Maher said, his voice getting louder. I'm not going to apologize for having standards. Standards? Jackson repeated. You mean the standards that have kept people who look like me out of serious conversations about film for decades? Those standards? Oh, here we go, Maher said, rolling his eyes. Everything's about race now. I'm talking about quality, not race. The room went dead silent. Even Maher seemed to realize immediately that he'd crossed a line. Jackson stood up slowly from his chair, his full height and presence suddenly filling the space. Everything's about race? Jackson said, his voice dangerously quiet. My brother, everything has always been about race. You just didn't notice because it never affected you. You get to sit here in your comfortable chair, on your comfortable show, with your comfortable opinions, and dismiss the experiences of people who've had to fight for every single opportunity they've ever gotten. And when we try to explain that to you, you roll your eyes like we're being dramatic. Maher stood up too, trying to match Jackson's energy. I'm one of the most liberal people in this business. I've fought for civil rights. I've called out racism. I've done more than most. You've done the bare minimum. And you want a cookie for it? Jackson said. You want credit for not being actively terrible. Congratulations, Bill. You cleared the lowest possible bar. That's not fair, Maher protested. Fair? Jackson's voice got louder. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's not fair. What's not fair is being one of the most bankable actors in Hollywood and still having people question whether you're a serious artist. What's not fair is watching people like you dismiss the work that means everything to communities that have been ignored. What's not fair is coming on your show to talk about my career and instead getting lectured about what real cinema is by someone who's never had to struggle for a single role in their life. I've struggled, Maher said weakly. Jackson laughed bitterly. Oh, you've struggled? Please, enlighten me. Tell me about how hard it was for you to get your HBO show. Tell me about all the doors that were closed in your face because of how you looked or where you came from. Tell me about the times you were told you weren't right for a part because there were already too many people like you in the cast. Maher's face was red now. You don't know anything about my life, and you don't know anything about mine, Jackson countered. But the difference is, I'm not sitting here pretending I do. I'm not dismissing your work. I'm not telling you that what you do doesn't matter. That's what you're doing to me and to countless other artists who don't fit your narrow definition of what's worthy. The audience was completely enthralled now. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. This was years of frustration pouring out. And everyone in that studio could feel it. Maher tried to regain control. Look, Sam, I think we're both getting a little heated here. Maybe we should take a breath and... Don't tell me to take a breath, Jackson interrupted. You started this. You invited me here. You asked the questions. You made the dismissive comments. And now that I'm responding, now that I'm pushing back, suddenly you want to calm things down? Nah, man. We're doing this. Fine, Maher said, his voice sharp. You want to do this? Let's do this. The truth is, and everyone here knows it, actors like you used to take risks. You used to be in challenging films that asked difficult questions. Now you're just playing the same character over and over again in movies that are designed by committee to sell action figures. That's not growth, Sam. That's selling out. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Jackson's jaw clenched. And for a moment, everyone in that studio thought he might actually lose his cool completely. But Samuel L. Jackson didn't become a legend by losing control at the wrong moments. Selling out, Jackson said slowly, his voice ice cold. Let me tell you something about selling out, Bill. Selling out is pretending to be controversial while never actually risking anything. Selling out is building a career on saying edgy things to a crowd that already agrees with you. Selling out is acting like you're some kind of rebel truth teller, when really you're just another talking head getting paid millions to state opinions. At least I'm honest about what I do. I make movies. Some of them are fun, some of them are serious, and all of them are made with passion and effort by people who care about their craft. What do? You sit behind a desk and judge everyone else's work, while contributing nothing of value yourself. The audience gasped. Maher's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He tried to formulate a response, but Jackson wasn't done. And you know what really gets me? Jackson continued, his voice rising. You have the audacity to sit here and lecture me about taking risks when you've never risked a damn thing in your comfortable life. I grew up in segregated Tennessee. I participated in protests and demonstrations. I worked my ass off for decades before I got my first major break. I've earned everything I have, and I don't need validation from you or anyone else to know that my work matters. Those kids who dress up as Nick Fury for Halloween, those young actors who see someone who looks like them in major movies and believe they can do it too, those families who go to the theater together and share an experience, that's who I do this for. Not for you, not for critics, for them. And if you can't understand that, then you're even more out of touch than I thought. Maher's face went through several emotions rapidly. Anger, embarrassment, defensiveness, all competing for dominance. When he finally spoke, his voice was bitter. You know what, Sam? Maybe you should leave. Clearly, you can't handle having an adult conversation without getting emotional. The audience reacted loudly to that. Several people booed. Jackson smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Emotional, Jackson repeated. There's that word. You know what that's code for, right? It's what people say when someone challenges them and they don't have a real response. I'm not being emotional, Bill. I'm being honest. Maybe you're just not used to guests who don't kiss your ass. I've had plenty of guests who disagreed with me, Maher said defensively, and I bet you loved it when they were polite about it, Jackson said. When they disagreed respectfully, played by your rules, let you have the last word. Well, I'm not that guy. You disrespected me. You disrespected my work. And you disrespected an entire genre of filmmaking that has meant the world to millions of people. And when I called you on it, you told me to leave. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Maher pointed toward the exit. The door's right there if you want to use it. Jackson nodded slowly. You know what? I think I will. I don't need to sit here and be insulted by someone who thinks his opinion is the only one that matters. I came here in good faith, ready to have a real conversation. But you don't want conversation, Bill. You want agreement. You want people to nod along while you lecture them. And when someone pushes back, you can't handle it. I can handle it just fine, Maher said. I just don't have time for this nonsense. Nonsense, Jackson said, grabbing his phone from the side table. That's what you call someone standing up for themselves and their craft. Nonsense. You know what the real nonsense is? The fact that you've built an entire career on supposedly speaking truth to power, but the moment someone speaks truth to you, you fold like a cheap suit. The tension had reached its absolute peak. Security personnel appeared at the edge of the stage, unsure whether they needed to intervene. The audience was on the edge of their seats, some filming on their phones despite the rules against it. Maher tried one last time to assert control. "This is my show, Sam. My house, my rules." Jackson looked at him with something close to pity. "Your show, your rules, your little bubble where nobody can challenge you. Must be nice, Bill. Must be real comfortable living in a world where you're always right, and everyone else is just too sensitive or too emotional or too something to understand your genius." But here's the thing. Out there in the real world, people are watching this, and they're seeing exactly who you are. They're seeing a man who talks a big game about free speech and open dialogue, but who tells a guest to leave the moment that dialogue gets uncomfortable. "Are you done?" Maher asked coldly. "Yeah, I'm done," Jackson said, standing at his full height. "I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this show, and I'm done giving time to people who don't deserve it. You want me to leave? I'm leaving. But I'm leaving on my terms, not yours." Jackson turned to the audience, many of whom started applauding. "Y'all have been great. Sorry you had to witness this mess. But sometimes you gotta stand up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." He started walking toward the exit, his stride confident and unhurried. Maher, perhaps realizing how badly this was playing, called after him, "Sam, come on. Don't be like this." Jackson stopped and turned back one last time. "Don't be like what, Bill? Don't be honest? Don't call out disrespect when I see it? Don't stand up for myself and my work?" "Nah, man. This is exactly who I'm going to be. The question is, are you going to think about why this happened? Or are you just going to tell yourself, I was being too sensitive?" Maher didn't answer. He just stood there, his face a mixture of anger and embarrassment, as Jackson turned back toward the exit. "By the way," Jackson added, pausing at the edge of the stage, "those Marvel movies you hate so much, they're going to be watched and loved long after your show is canceled and forgotten. Think about that." And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walked off the real-time stage, leaving Bill Maher standing alone in front of an audience that didn't know whether to applaud or stay silent. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Maher's discomfort, the awkward silence that filled the studio, the realization dawning on everyone's faces that they'd just witnessed something that would be talked about for years. Jackson pushed through the backstage door, the sound of scattered applause and confused murmuring following him. A producer tried to stop him, asking if he wanted to come back and finish the segment, but Jackson just shook his head and kept walking. His security team met him in the hallway, and together they headed toward the exit. Behind them, they could hear Maher trying to recover, telling the audience they'd go to commercial break, attempting to make a joke about sensitive actors. But his voice sounded hollow, defeated. The damage was done. Jackson reached the parking lot, the cool night air hitting his face. He took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly fade. His phone was already buzzing with texts and calls, words spreading fast about what had just happened. One of his security guards asked if he was okay. Jackson nodded. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Sometimes you gotta remind people that respect goes both ways, you know? Can't let people think they can just say whatever they want without consequences." He climbed into the waiting car, and as they pulled away from the studio, he looked back one last time at the building where real time was filmed. Somewhere in there, Bill Maher was probably trying to salvage the rest of his show, trying to spin what had happened into something he could control. But Jackson knew the truth. You can't control what happens when you disrespect someone who spent their entire life earning respect. You can't dismiss someone's life's work and expect them to smile and take it. And you definitely can't tell someone to leave and then act surprised when they actually do. The car merged into Los Angeles traffic, carrying Samuel L. Jackson away from what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked about talk show confrontations in recent memory. But for Jackson, it wasn't about the attention or the controversy. It was about something simpler and more important. It was about dignity, about standing up when someone tries to put you down, about refusing to play by rules that were designed to keep you quiet, about knowing your worth and not letting anyone, no matter how famous or powerful they think they are, make you forget it. As the city lights blurred past the car windows, Jackson smiled to himself. He'd come to that studio to talk about movies, to share stories from his career, to connect with an audience. Instead, he'd ended up teaching Bill Maher a lesson the host desperately needed to learn. Some lessons, Jackson thought, are worth the uncomfortable moments it takes to teach them.